gentlemen, we are tonight's entertainment.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ben Robbins from the Lost World of Movie Props, and I'm here today with Martin Ballantyne. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. It's nice to finally meet you and talk to you on Zoom.
Yeah. We had a few technical difficulties, but we're here now. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, whenever I do talk to people, there's always some sort of technical problem, and it never starts on time, and it's always I always feel a bit guilty.
No, not at all. It's probably my end. I've got a really old laptop, so now I'm using my iPhone 14, and that seems to be doing the trick. So that's all good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today. I've got some questions about your career and certain things that you've done. Get stuck in and let's go for it.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, no worries, Ben.
Yeah, awesome. So when you were growing up as obviously a kid and coming into your teen years, were you always a fan of TV shows and films, or did that come into your life a bit later on?
No, film and TV has been a massive part of my life. I mean, I'm one of these people, it's a bit sad, really, a bit of a nerd, but I'd watch something and then I wanted to take it further. So this is, because I'm so old, this predates the internet. I would read up about it, talk to other people about things, primarily like sci-fi, like your Blake Sevens and Doctor Who's. And I mean, I was attending events, like Doctor Who events and things like that, when I was sort of 16, 17. So we're talking over 30 years ago. A lot of people think Comic-Cons and things like that are a relatively new thing, but I was going to them 30 odd years ago. And I would talk to the writers and obviously the actors. And I always wanted to just get as much information about the things that I was watching and enjoying as possible. I wasn't sort of a light watcher of these things. I mean, now you'd be called a nerd, and the thing is, with Google, you can find so much information about programs that you're watching within 10 seconds. But back in the day, you used to have to do your homework, and I loved all that. And I mean, it was primarily sci-fi I was into growing up, and also I had an affinity for Laurel and Hardy, so I used to love watching Laurel and Hardy. And yeah. I just found them, sublime. How clever, given the technology back then. We're talking over 100 years ago now. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, just stuff I sort of admired it really, and a lot of slapstick. I mean, Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Sort of right at the beginning of sort of the dawn of film and TV. Well, film, and then obviously over to TV. Later time, but I mean, it's something that's always been a big part of my life, and so sorry, I sort of waffled on a bit there from your question, but yeah, that's really how it sort of started, to be honest.
So which kind of TV shows and films was it that sort of inspired you and got your brain thinking, I'm gonna start moving into this industry and start not just doing the research, but start putting that into play?
Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, what am I now? I'm 50. I was acting. I got into acting in my late 20s, early 30s. So I've been about 20 years. But that was really down to sort of just building up my self-confidence. And I it's a bit of a cliche, but you can buy these idiot books, how to become so I basically bought How to Become an Actor. And It said, and I mean, it's basically said, try and get yourself on set. And the easiest way to get yourself on set was basically to become a supporting artist. And that's what I did. I became an SA, and I used to go along to a lot of these sort of films and TVs, and I'd talk to all the right people, if that makes sense. And after I'd filmed my little bit, I'd ask them if I can stay on set, and I'd stay on set while they were filming them. And they said, yeah, make sure you stand behind the camera. And it was amazing. It was better than anything, I could have asked for. So people, really, you get what you give. So if you're nice, people respect that. I mean, there's a lot of a-holes out there, and they'll remember them as well. But if you're nice, people remember you. So, I mean, that's all I was. I was sort of, I didn't know much. So I was just sort of asking the right questions, not making myself, what's the word, a nuisance on set. And and people respected that. And that sort of went from there, really. But this was, so I sort of did it around the wrong way, really. I didn't have any experience acting wise initially, but as I started getting roles, I started doing more training. So I did quite a lot of acting training. So I was sort of on the job training, as it were. And that sort of snowballed from there, really, when I started getting the bigger and bigger parts. and I was still training at the time. I mean, actors never give up sort of learning, to be honest. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe I was quite fortunate in the early days, but I got some really nice big parts. Well, not big parts, small parts, but in big films. And that was sort of how I sort of launched my career, if you like, from that, really.
Cool. So when I was looking you up online, and I came across one of your first films was back in 2006.
Yeah, I mean, that would be what, Cashback?
I found that you were a zombie.
Oh yeah, Gasoline Blood. That was great fun. Yeah, Gasoline Blood. Yeah, that was great fun working on that. I mean, at the time, I was working on basically anything I was interested in. I mean, I've always liked horror films. Who doesn't like horror films? And yeah, I mean, being a zombie is pretty cool. At the time, I'd actually written. What I'd done, I was a massive fan of Shaun of the Dead. I'm trying to think the timeline here. I think Shaun of the Dead had already come out, and I was trying to get a stage play version produced, and I actually got the rights, which was amazing. And I had a conversation with Edgar Wright on the phone because he was really keen for me to do it, and I was trying to get everything together for the stage play. But at the same time, my sort of acting career started to kick off, and there was quite a few problems with casting. And in the end, I sort of just let it go. And I'd already played, and I think like I said, I'm not sure the actual timeline here, but I'd already played a zombie, obviously, in Gasoline Blood, and that was great fun. And that's right, that's what got me the part, because I'd been in the process of writing the stage play version of Shaun of the Dead, and the director, can't remember his name now, he found this out. So he said, oh, he'd be quite good to play a zombie because obviously he's into zombies. And that's what I did. So, but yeah, it's such a shame that the stage play never actually happened. I think it has happened since with a different production company. But I struggled really because at this point I didn't really have all the pieces in place. I had the rights to do it. But that was about it, really. But we were trying to do it on a relatively small budget, and that just didn't really lend itself to a small budget. I think it was, in the end, it was done with a bit more of a professional team, because, like I say, back in those days, I was a little bit more sort of, green around the gills, as it were, and wasn't quite as au fait as I am now.
So on Gasoline Blood, being a zombie, did you have to do any research to be a zombie? What sort of obviously other shows did you look at all, and how did you dress up for it? Was it like?
Yeah, I mean, the director is pretty good about it. He just said, look, just sort of, I mean, he said sort of go with the flow. So I had an old suit, so I just sort of tore it all up a bit, and I watched all the old 70s films. I'm trying to think, Dawn of the Dead and all that. The one in the shopping mall. I'm trying to think which one that is. I think that is Dawn of the Dead, isn't it? So yeah, I just sort of get a gist of that. And I watched some of them, how they walked. And the director was really pleased with my walk. So I sort of do a stumbly walk, and I sort of drag my foot behind me. So I just wanted to be a bit more sort of, just bring a bit more character to it. And it was great fun. I don't know if you've seen the film. I think it's available somewhere online. You can probably find it if you do a bit of Googling, but it was great fun. And he made it look like a 1970s film. And we filmed it on a disused, I'm trying to think, it was like an airfield, but it was owned by some travellers. They very kindly let us film on there. So that was quite cool. But yeah, I think if you Google it, you can find it. It does exist. But there we go.
Cool. Then moving a bit further forward, I also come across the Golden Compass as well.
Yeah, but that was
when I saw that come up.
Yeah, that was sort of my big break, if you like, really. I got that through my agent, and it was a weird one, really, because they wanted sort of a big guy. I'm quite a big guy, and they wanted a big guy to play a Trollison. Yeah. And so I went for it. I had to sort of audition and that, and then I was on set, and I couldn't believe it. And again, like I said earlier, I was sort of chatting to the right people, some of the second ADs and the runners and that, and just got really friendly with them. And like I said, if you're nice, people remember you. So they were putting me forward for other films. One of I think it was a second or third AD. He said, "Oh, he'd be brilliant for the Dark Knight. We need a big guy for that," because he was then going to work. Because all the people on these films were all self-employed. It's all word of mouth. So he put me forward for the Dark Knight, which I was ever so grateful for. At the same time, I was doing a TV show called Kingdom, where I was playing a character called Jason. Because at this point, I'd only sort of done a little bit of sort of film and TV. I primarily like doing stage work, amateur theatre, which is how I started, which is great fun actually. And they say if you can't, you basically stage is the ultimate. If you can work on stage, you can work anywhere. Yeah. And so I'd done quite a bit of stage, which I loved. And people were saying, "Oh, you ought to be in film." So I sent off a load of headshots, and that's how I ended up getting the role in the Golden Compass of the Trollerson. Again, it's only a little part, but it doesn't matter. I got to meet some amazing people, and I met one of my heroes at the time. I mean, he's still amazing. It's Sam Elliott, and I mean, I love what's it called, Roadhouse, and I chatted to him about Roadhouse. And he's so humble, and he was such a love, still is a lovely guy. I haven't seen him for a long time, but I mean, he said, yeah, that Roadhouse movie is sort of, it's sort of burned into history now, especially with Family Guy and things. It's referenced left, right, and centre. I believe they're doing a new one with Jake Gyllenhaal, I believe. What that'll be like, I don't know. But anyway, so he was there, and so it was so cool to sort of chilling and chatting with him, and then. I'm trying to think what the director's name was now, but he was there and we were chatting away. And yeah, and like I said, they put me forward for the Dark Knight, and I auditioned for that. And I got that, which I was made up about. But I only found out when I was on the set of Kingdom with Stephen Fry. I actually got a phone call when I was actually on set, and I got told off for taking my phone call. But it was the fact that I actually got the part in Batman, and I just couldn't believe it. Because at the time, they don't sort of tell you what the film titles are. So Dark Knight was called Rory's First Kiss. So they were very cagey. They're always cagey about these things. So they don't want sort of people turning up on set, because a lot of them are sort of in quite public places when we film. And they have problems with people, photographers, and especially with people like Heath Ledger and all the famous people there. They try and take photos and then sell them on. So they're very, very cagey about the titles of the films. But yeah, I found out that was Batman. They told me over the phone that that's what it was. So so then I got the part in The Dark Knight, which was probably my sort of, in my head, is the biggest part I've ever had, because it's such a seminal film. And I got to work with the lovely Heath Ledger, who was one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with, and at the time I regarded as a friend, because we spent a lot of time together. So
So what was it like being on the Dark Knight set for the very first day? Obviously seeing the whole set up, and obviously getting your directions on what to do.
Well, it was strange, because we filmed that scene, the scene that I'm in, we filmed it in Battersea in London, and it's a disused car park. And how we actually got to set was, because obviously it's slap bang in the middle of London, we were on a little minibus. So I'm sat there with Heath Ledger and some of the other guys in the scene, and they hand out all these little bags out of the bag. They hand out these sort of hoods, and they're black hoods. So we're all in this little minibus, and we have to put these hoods on, and they're totally black, but you can see through them, but you can't see into them. So there's about 10 of us on this minibus, including Heath. So we get out, and then as soon as we get out, cameras just start flashing like mad. But no one knows which one Heath is, because they mix them all up between us. So we get led to the set, and I found out that the day before, someone had actually got onto the set and was taking photos. That's why they were really, really strict about the security. So we walked into what was literally a car park, a disused car park. We walked up where the cars drive up, and we went up about third floor, and then that's where the jail scene actually was. So they'd actually constructed a real jail, not like some things made out of paper mache, but no, this was a proper full working jail door and everything. So when I got up there, I couldn't believe it. It was just like, I've just walked up 3 flights of, slopes of the car park, and now I'm in a jail scene. And so it was very, very surreal. And then you had Christopher Nolan there, stood there talking. And he is a very, very, very hands-on director with everyone. I mean, you've got to remember, obviously, I was effectively a nobody at that point, but I had actually gone through an audition process to be there with Nolan himself. He was very, very instrumental in all the casting. And he probably couldn't get away with this now, but he was very manhandling with everybody, very physical. He grabbed me by my shoulders. This is Nolan, and sort of he sort of shouted about an inch from my face just to try and get a rise out of me. He was doing it to others, not just me. I hadn't done anything wrong, but that's what he was doing. He's saying, "Look, you're already fucking pissed off. You're in jail. You're fucked off," and all this. So he was saying all this, and this is what he said. Look, this, and he was screaming and shouting at us, and then he went action. And then, so he was trying to get the best out of everybody. And, Heath was on a different planet because, you've seen it, he won an Oscar. So, the direction, I think he'd already been directed. He knew where he was. So he needed little to no direction from Nolan, I would say, in the scene that I'm in, because they'd obviously discussed it. And he got the part because he was in the, what's it called? The gay cowboy film. I forgot. Brokeback Mountain. Yeah. Because of that film, he got cast in The Dark Knight because he said that that film required a fearless actor. And he said, I wanted a fearless actor to play my Joker. And that's why he ended up getting that part. So it was unbelievable. Bear in mind, I'd only been acting at this point about two years or so. And I'm thinking, Christ, this is what's happening at this stage of my career. So I couldn't really believe it. I keep thinking, this is probably a peaked already, so... So we're talking, this is like 2007. So, because the scene I filmed, they were doing pre-release photos from that scene 18 months to 2 years before the film even came out. I was getting invited to Comic-Cons off the back of the picture that so I was doing a Comic-Con. I did a Comic-Con and the film wasn't even coming out for the best part of 2 years. Because I'm in the picture with Heath, the one in the jail, which I have got here, but you know the picture. I think you used it for the display for this podcast. And so I was sat there at Comic-Con. That's the only picture I had available because that's really all I'd done at that point. And I had so many people come up and see me, and it was very surreal. And this is like, I'm part of me thinking, what happens if the film's rubbish? But this was a big Comic-Con. It's like the NEC the one they were doing then. But they got asked me to attend, so I did, and and that was like, this is my whole life has started to change, and that one film has basically changed my life, I would say. I don't think a week goes by without some reference. I get people write to me about it, or they want, because I'm on Mimo, which is like what's it called, the one where you do the videos for people. I'm trying to think what the other Cameo. So I do that. I get requests for doing that, and so I'm always reminded of that film. It's 2008, so it's 15 years ago, and I filmed it 17 years ago. But it's constant. It's amazing, really, that that's sort of been my defining moment, really. Obviously, I've gone on and done quite a lot of other bits and bobs since then, but still in my head, that is my favourite. Obviously, it's very sad that Heath died, but that sort of gave the film sort of a notoriety similar to like maybe The Crow or something. But so many people come up to me and say, "Oh, what's it like working with Heath?" And the thing is, I don't want to lie to people. At the time, obviously, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. He was just a sort of a normalish guy. Obviously, when he was in character, you wouldn't want to go anywhere near him. But as soon as he said cut, he dropped his character, and we'd go out and have a cigarette together. And such a lovely, lovely guy. We chatted about acting, chatted about his family. We had a lot of time together, and it was absolutely awesome. And he was just like a normal guy, just having a chat. And then, sadly, when he passes, when people pass when they're young, they go into sort of cult status. Look at James Dean, and that's the thing. People think, oh, it must be amazing. It's like, well, it was cool, but he wasn't like this massive cult status. He's only done about 2 or 3 films up to that point. People forget, really. He was a great actor, and obviously he won his Oscar. But when it comes to like having his like cult status, he, at the point that I knew him, he didn't have it. Sadly, he sort of gained, he gained that after he passed. And that's sadly that is the way with a lot of these people when they die young. You don't get to see them get old, like Marlon Brando, old and fat. You know what I mean? So they sort of lose their sort of mystique. Do you know? Does that make sense, Ben? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. It's funny you should mention The Crow, because I've always thought Heath Ledger and The Crow, Brandon Lee, how their characters were. They entered this cult status and they were both so young and they hadn't even peaked in their careers.
No,
and
definitely
just how people took the Joker and obviously The Crow, and lots of people combine that link together. And I think that brings a lot to it, really, though.
I mean, The Crow was an amazing film. I loved it, and it looked really good. The fact that obviously I hadn't quite finished, and the graphics. Well, they use sort of computer technology to finish it off. But given it was what we're talking late 90s here, it looks really good. I saw it recently, and it still looks amazing. Given, like I said, it's like Gladiator. I mean, when what's he called died? I've forgotten his name. Is it not Peter O'Toole? Oh, what's he called? He died anyway. In Gladiator, they had to use CGI to sort of bring him back, didn't they? And it looks, who am I talking about? Do you know who I'm talking about? Oliver Reed. That's it.
Oliver Reed, yes.
So they used CGI to recreate the scenes that they hadn't filmed because he obviously passed. So they did the same, obviously, with Brandon Lee, and it looked amazing. And obviously, Heath had fully finished Dark Knight. But sadly, he hadn't finished the next film he did, which was Dr. Parnassus, and that's where they got Johnny Depp and Jude Law and someone else to fill in from when he goes through the door. There's someone else in there as well, isn't there? I'm trying to think who the other one is. I think they used 3 actors, didn't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and someone else. And that's the one he sadly didn't finish. But that was a great film. I saw that at the cinema, and that's dedicated to Heath Ledger, which is quite sweet. But there we go.
So you mentioned obviously Heath coming in and out of character. What was it like to be around him as the Joker? How did that make you feel being on set? Did it make you snap into character more, or were you kind of scared to be near him?
Yeah, I mean, that bit where he sits there clapping, he would sort of carry on doing that when he said sort of cut. But this is not. So I'm talking about when we were still on the actual scene where we hadn't gone for lunch or cigarette break, and he would sit there and he would just scream. And first time he did it, it freaked everyone out. But he would constantly do it just to keep in character. And he would sort of stretch his legs out like a Cossack. So he'd put his legs right out and then sort of pull them right back in. And he was doing all this basically to carry on being in character. So this would be like if there was a camera change or something slightly different, not a full sort of cut. It's just, just so he could carry on being in character. And no, I would never have spoken to him at that point because it was like a different person. It was like Heath Ledger, and then there was the Joker. And to me, in my head, they were 2 different people. But I mean, what he did say to me, which I did when he was being Heath Ledger, he said, "Look, Martin, if you want to get some nice sort of screen time, stick with me." And that's what I did, and that's why I'm in the pictures with him. And he sort of took me under his wing. Sounds a bit corny, but that's what he did. And we got on so well. And I think that's because we were both smokers, and a lot of people weren't. So we were going out and smoking, so we were like smoking buddies, and that sort of transferred across. So, but yeah, I mean, the first I knew about me being in that scene is Empire magazine. I saw it on the stand, and there's me stood there next to Heath, and I couldn't believe it. So much so, I actually emailed Empire, and they published my letter saying, so I've got that framed somewhere. I'm on the cover, and then there's my letter actually in the magazine on the next month, obviously, saying that I was made up about seeing myself on the cover, so which was quite cool. So, but this is back in the day before internet was in its relatively early days, so it's more magazine based. I don't even know I think Empire's still a magazine now, but yeah, everything's internet now, isn't it? So there we go.
I watched your scene again, and I noticed one of the other prisoners, he did a little shove as well when you're walking around.
Yeah, I know. It's quite funny. Yeah, that was all. I mean, the thing is, Nolan basically just said sort of play along with it. Initially, I mean, a lot of people were sticking their fingers up at the camera, and because he was trying to get quite a low rating, like a PG-13 or whatever they call it, 12. they had to stop them, because as soon as you have like a middle finger in a film, it becomes like a 15 back in the day. And so he was quite keen to try and get the certificate down. So he had to stop people from sort of effectively swearing in that scene. So I'm amazed it got, I'm not sure, I think it's a 12, isn't it? But it got, because I remember doing interviews at the time about the fact that it was only a 12, and they were saying the main scene that they didn't think should make it more of a 15 film was the bit with the pencil where he pushes the bloke's head over. My friend was in that scene, and you don't actually see as much as you imagine. It's a bit like the Reservoir Dogs. You don't actually see him cut his ear off, so it's one of those scenes where it's really in your mind's eye as opposed to actually in front of you on screen. So
So obviously, coming off The Dark Knight, is that when you then moved into the Bourne Ultimatum with Matt Damon?
Again, because you sort of get to know people, they put you forward for these things, and I mean that was good. That was only a little bit. We filmed that in London. I'm trying to think. Oh God, one of the big train stations, because I'm in that scene where he's running through the crowd. That was a nightmare because most of those people in that crowd were actual real passengers. And because they couldn't close it down. I'm trying to think which one it was now. It's I'm trying to think which station it is. It's a very, very popular station, obviously a very, very busy station. So what they did is they put signs up everywhere, because if they put signs up, they can say, look, you may be on film. And then they put like pockets of us all mixed in with the crowd. So he was meant to run through and push into, but invariably he was knocking into other people. So it actually got quite heated. They were getting a bit cross with some people, were getting a bit peed off, getting knocked over because they do lots and lots of takes. So, that was the scene, and that scene keep getting repeated to future films because they keep referencing that scene. So I end up with 3 or 4 credits only because it's the scenes in the same is repeated in subsequent films. So that's quite nice, really. So it sort of boosts up my credits. So
what's it like filming, obviously, then with like the general public still about? Is it really challenging to obviously hit marks and scenes, or
very much so,
and just go for it?
I'd rather have a closed set anytime, but sometimes you just can't do it. I mean, I'd rather not have the general public in there, but I mean that's not down to me. It's obviously up to the director and the what can and can't be done. But I mean no. So I wouldn't really, given a choice, I'd rather have a closed set. But I mean, again, I'm such a small cog in the wheel. I don't have any say in it really.
I've always wondered that, because there's certain scenes you see in films and TV, and you can sometimes see someone with a camera phone, and you think, are they an extra, or is that just general public standing there?
No. I mean, now it must be even more difficult because obviously these films were filmed before camera phones were worth filming with, but obviously camera phones now are very, very high tech. It must be even more difficult now, because at the end of the day, if you're in a public forum and they've got people filming, you can't do much about it. You can't go up to them and demand they delete it. So I think filmmakers today using sort of public forums must be an absolute nightmare for them. But I think the people you see are probably real people standing there filming. People film everything nowadays. So so I think you'll find that. I've seen stuff before with. I've seen like leaked footage when you look on the internet, and that'll be someone with a camera phone filming a scene, and obviously you get a totally different angle because they're filming it, especially like stuff like Tom Cruise when he films in London, because he's quite often filming in London. I've seen quite a lot of footage of people filming him doing his thing from, because obviously you can't close the middle of London down. But there you go. Yeah.
So we move on to a little bit of Harry Potter, because I'm quite excited to talk to you about Harry Potter.
It's amazing, really. I ended up in Half-Blood Prince, and I was on set for absolute ages, and I didn't even get. I got a tiny little bit of. Sort of screen time, and they sort of apologised to me and they said, "Look, Martin, we've had you here a long time, and we haven't really used you." I did get a bit of screen time, and I've sort of seen it. But they said, would you like to come back and play a different character in the next one? I said, yeah, it'd be awesome. He said, we don't usually ask people because we want to, but we're conscious that you didn't seem to get much screen time. So I came back for Deathly Hallows. At the time, it was only going to be one film. So it was just called Deathly Hallows. It wasn't part one or part two. I think they suddenly realised they ran out of books and they turned it into two films, which is what they do now. And ironically, it was probably the smallest book as well, but it still became two films. And yeah, at the time, I didn't know I had the part as Mundungus's associate. I was sort of pretty made up about it, really, because we were sat there and they took me to one side and they said, look, we'd like you to do this part because you're a tall guy. I mean, you're going to be working with Andy Linden. Andy Linden's very short. But the scene we want is you're going to be actually stood in the road and Andy Linden's going to be on the path. And the path is about 6-7 inches higher than the road, but we still want an actor to be able to stand over Andy Linden, and you're probably the tallest one here, and that's why I ended up, because the scene worked quite nicely. So I am actually sort of dwarfing Andy Linden, despite the fact he's actually raised, and they gave me some lines, which was lovely. Initially, I had to sort of just do improv. And at that point, I didn't really have any point of reference. I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I hadn't really seen much at that point. So I didn't really know what to do. So I sort of just harked back to when I used to get lines on stage. So I sort of overplayed him a little bit. And then David Yates, the director, came up to me and said, look, Martin, we're not on stage now. And that totally threw me. But I didn't realise, but he did his homework on absolutely everybody. So he'd known I used to do stage work. So he actually, and then he gave me some guidance how he wanted me to play the part. But I mean, so in total, I was probably on set on and off for about 3 or 4 months, if not longer, which is amazing.
Right.
Really. Yeah, and obviously I was getting paid, but most of the time I was just sitting in sort of big tents drinking coffee, which is weird, really. But no, I was made up, and I shared the same dressing room as Andy Linden, which was nice. And he's such a lovely guy, and he was quite friendly with David Yates, which is how he ended up playing with Douglas Fletcher. And I've never actually met Andy Linden since. He does conventions and I do conventions, but we've never done one together, which seems crazy, really, because we're in the scene together. And so I'm hoping one day we might end up doing, a double signing, which would be nice. It's the same with the Dark Knight. There's another guy in that picture, and I don't think he's ever done a signing, and it would be cool to find him. But I mean, the thing is, we did find him. All the photos that I've signed, people just go and get his signature. So there's probably not much in it for me, really. Do you know what I mean? So he'll just get loads of work signing the picture that's already been signed by me. But there we go. So, but yeah, it's weird. You see these people, you work with them, and then you don't see them for ever again. Yeah. So, but that's just the nature of the business. So
obviously your character on Harry Potter, what kind of thought process were you going through when you were in the improv? So what were you sort of really thinking, were you putting your theatre background into the improv, or were you just
initially
going for it?
Yeah, and then he sort of gave me a bit more background to my character. Basically I was like a sort of quite a shady character, and I knew Mundungus Fletcher was obviously a shady character, and I was meant to be buying some bits and bobs off him, which were obviously stolen. And that's really what they said. He just said, look, you're a sort of a shady mate of Andy Linden, and of Mundungus, and you're trying to buy some bits and bobs off him. So we had to do a bit of negotiating. It's sad, really, that because I had all my lines, but they did it in the sound system. So really, you can only hear my lines out well if you've got a decent sound system, because it's sort of in the back speakers. So first time I played it on a normal TV, I didn't hear it, and then at the time I had like a 7.1 sound system, and it's like, oh, there I am. But I had to go into the studio and record it afterwards. So I knew it must be there somewhere. So, but when you see it on TV, if you just sit and watch it, it's not very long. But that whole scene took weeks to film. It's all about, they filmed it left, right, and centre. And the thing is, that film was also in 3D. So they had to do so much was sort of geared for the 3D side of it as well. So it's a bit weird. They have a lot of green screen sort of mixed in there to make the actual the 3D, because 3D at that point was sort of quite a big thing. It sort of died a death now. but it was in its infancy there. It sort of had a 10-year period of being sort of the big next big thing. So so they were making that a 3D version. So I think I might be wrong here, I'm not a massive expert on it, but I think parts 1 and 2 of that film were in 3D. As you know, they were filmed in 3D, because some films are retrospectively turned into 3D, if that makes sense. Like Titanic, for instance, that was never meant to be 3D, but they played around with it to make it into 3D. But that was the Deathly Hallows was 3D from day one. But we had to film it all different ways to get the 3D aspect working, if that makes sense.
So coming a bit further forward now, because I was seeing recently in a lot of posts with you and some few signings you've done. You're signing Star Wars stuff because you've been in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, but I really didn't know about that. That sounds crazy, but yeah, I got the part, but I didn't know I had the part, if that makes sense, because they don't give you what it's called. So originally it was called Pilgrim. So I went along, and basically it was just in a little studio with green screen, and I was just stood there waving and waving. I didn't know what it was. They don't tell me. But I always say to them, can you make sure I get an IMDb credit? And they go, yeah, I'll pop you on there. And filmed about 2.5 years ago. Just stood there waving the best part of 8 hours. And that was it, really. Didn't think anything of it. It's only because someone contacted me and said, oh, look, you're in Star Wars, because they'd seen my credit pop up on IMDb. But then it became, after Pilgrim, I think it became Joshua Tree. They had these, like I say, they have these little weird names for it. And then, so I feel like a little bit, am I really in it? And then someone found a photo of me, and if you go on the fandom page, there's a picture of me actually doing the waving, and then another fan made a nice 10x8 up of me. So I thought, all right, okay, obviously there's some fan interest here. So I've started doing sort of bits and bobs with that. And then I've been invited to a Star Wars show in no, I'm not sure it's in Peterborough, but it's not far from here. And they're going to be doing, I think I'm the only guest there, actually. It's sort of a Star Wars themed cosplay thing. So I'm going to be there signing sort of primarily Star Wars bits and bobs. So so that was amazing, because I'm a massive fan. Who isn't? The original trilogy, I would say. I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me, but there is a lot of spin-offs now. But Disney spent a lot of money on it, so it was inevitable they were going to try and make as much money as they possibly could. And don't get me wrong, I love the original 3 amazing films, and then obviously they did the prequels, which were okay, and the sequels were pretty cool. And then obviously there seems to be everything on TV now. Obviously Mandalorian, which is pretty cool. I haven't started the 3rd season yet. Excuse me. And then there's lots of other. I've got the Disney Plus channel, so every time I look, there's something new Star Wars related. So, I'm good friends with Spencer Wilding, who obviously played Vader in Rogue One, and we do quite a lot of shows together, which is quite cool. So, it's great. It's lovely having that franchise sort of attachment, albeit very, very small involvement, but there we go. That's the way it is in these things when you get these sort of little tags. I'm quite proud of the franchises I'm involved in, because I do sort of cherry pick what I do now. I'm very, very select. When you start off, you basically do everything, but as you get older and wiser, you think, right, what would work as a franchise to be attached to? And obviously Star Wars, the only 2 I haven't done, which I'd love to do, is James Bond and Doctor Who. There would be 2 franchises which would be absolutely amazing to be in. But there we go. I've done pretty well so far. I think I've got about 4 or 5 good franchises under my belt, as it were. So
smashing the franchises, definitely.
So I'm just gonna have a drink.
No, go for it.
Out
of all the franchises you've worked for, was working on any of the sets, was there any real difficult times where you had to learn and think on the spot, or was being on set where you always just directed and you knew what to do?
The level that I was at, there wasn't that much I could do, really. And the most involvement I really had for that would be the Harry Potters that we've already covered. The thing is, it's weird, really, because I've done Lambda training, the London Art of Movement and Dramatic Art, and I've got an equity card, so I'm a bona fide actor. But I find that when you do that, you don't, the joke is people only really interested in the actual big franchises. And I sometimes feel guilty when I'm at shows. I mean, I was at a show, I can't remember his name now. He said, I've been an actor 45 years. Not one person's ever asked for my autograph. I did one episode of Game of Thrones and I've got 1,000 friends. And this is the thing. I know, it's crazy. And this is what he was saying. And I feel like I fell into it quite quickly because I mean, I'm sat on panels with people like Colin Baker and that. And I think I don't deserve to be here because you've got these amazing actors, such iconic roles. And then I'm stood there or sat there with them. And it's like, all I did is like appear in some of these films, albeit in some nice little scenes. And then I'm afforded the same sort of treatment of these people. I mean, it's a very, very strange, I love it to bits. And I find, the fans are absolutely amazing. And it's such a lovely thing. But at the end of the day, I am an actor and I've done some, I mean, you'll see on IMDb, I've done a lot of sort of my own films and I've written, produced, directed, and I love doing stuff like that. But people don't really care about them. They just want to talk to you about, and I don't mind. Some actors are very precious about it, and they won't sort of, they might do one part in something, and then everyone wants to talk to them about that, and they're really a bit dismissive of it. Oh, come and see you in my one-man play. They don't want to see you in your one-man play. They want to talk to you about being in Star Wars or Doctor Who. And this is the thing. Some actors, and I'm not naming names because it's entirely up to them, they are very sort of precious about what they do. I'm very sort of open about the fact that I do a lot of franchises, and that's by design. I wanted to do franchises. I mean, I used to be, and I still am a fan of film, and I used to go along to a lot of these film conventions and stuff, meeting these people. And we used to meet people from Star Wars who'd been in it as equivalent as I have, like a split second, and they'd be sitting there, so I'd be chatting to them. So I'd always thought, right, I'd be great to be one of those people. And obviously a sideline of doing that is you become an actor, but you also do these little parts in these big franchises. So, but there we go. I mean, that's just the way it is. Every actor has their own, some actors won't work on television or film, they only work on stage. I mean, I'm quite proud of the fact I've done all three. I mean, I love working on stage. And I mean, they say you do stage for your soul, you do your TV for the exposure, and you do film for the money. And it's true. Yeah. That definitely works because I mean, I always remember this this story that Patrick Stewart was. He didn't say it to me because I've never met him, but I heard him. I think it was written or he was talking about it, and this was on the night that the new Star Trek was going to be shown in America, and he was obviously quite wary about it. And he talked to Gene Roddenberry. He said, "Look, I'm not." He said, "Well, look, you've been an actor on, stage playing King Lear, and he said you've been doing that for what? I think at that point you've been doing for about 20 years." He said, "How many people do you play to?" And he said, "On a very good night, 300-400." So he said, "Well, over the years, you probably played what? 10,000, 15, 20,000. I said, "Yeah, probably." He said, "Well, think of that number, times that number by 100. That's how many people tonight are going to see you play Picard." And he just said it just dawned on him. You see, you can be an amazing actor, but if people don't see you, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, everyone sort of goes on about De Niro and Pacino being amazing, which they are, but there could be other actors who are even better, but no one's ever seen them because they're just on sort of small stages. And this is the thing he was saying, and then it suddenly dawned on him that everybody was going to see him play Picard, because it was such an anticipated series, because obviously it hadn't been on TV for the best part of 30 years. And this is the thing, and he didn't realise it was going to be such a massive hit. And he said he didn't even unpack his suitcase on the first, because he thought that was going to get cancelled, and then obviously he got picked up for the second. Yeah, that's what he was saying. He really didn't think much of it at the time, because I mean he's obviously a Shakespearean actor, and there we go. So yeah, I just find stuff like that fascinating, and there's so many different stories. I mean, when you hear and speak to other actors and that, like I say, everyone has a different journey, and people do it for their own reasons, But I just love going to events and meeting people, and just, I mean, some of the people I've met on set, just amazing. And I mean, I'm a massive fan, really, and there's no better way of being a fan than actually being involved with the thing that you're interested in. So,
Yeah, because I read online that you're also a film collector of memorabilia as well.
Well, I
You
used
still-
to be. Yeah, no, I mean, I used to. Like I said before, I was into acting. I used to go, like I said to you earlier, I used to go to Comic Cons and that kind of thing. And there was I mean, I don't know what you read, but I was involved with a operation with this guy who was doing fake autographs. I ended up doing a program about it because I actually caught him doing fake autographs, and I reported him to the appropriate authorities, and then they bought a load off them, and then we had to look at them and say, yep, they're fake. And then he ended up getting arrested, and then the TV company contacted me, and I was involved with the documentary about the how we actually caught him. So that was quite interesting. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, back in the day, autographs were relatively easy to get. They're very expensive now. A lot of the actors charge a lot of money, especially some of the Star Wars actors. But back in the day, they were relatively achievable to get quite easily. Because I was collecting, like I said to you, over 30 years ago. I mean, you could go up to sort of Peter Mayhew and he'd charge you $5. I mean, I know he's sadly not with us anymore, but I think before he died, he was charging over £100. Like Anthony Daniels, he's about £100 now. I think he was about a tenner. I mean, I met Billy D. Williams. I've got a photo of me with him. I think he charged about 10 quid. I think last time I saw it, the celebration that's coming up, I think he's about 400 or something ridiculous for an autograph.
Wow.
It's crazy. 300 or 400, yeah. And they sell out. Because a lot of these actors now sadly aren't with us anymore. I mean, you know, original actors. So you got Kenny Baker. He used to be a fiver. I know. And I mean, I see Kenny Baker autographs. I remember I wrote to Kenny Baker and I sent him about 20 things. They all came back signed. And
Nice.
I see Kenny Baker autographs go for like 100 quid, 200 quid. It's like my friend's got about 15 Alec Guinness autographs from Star Wars, and I think they go for getting on for £1,000 each. And he used to write to them all the time. It's just amazing, really. And he's got like some doubles and triples with some of the other actors. And I dread to think what his collection's worth, you know, because he would just write to all these people. And this is what people forget. You know, I'm not trying to knock Comic Cons, but back in the day, what people used to do, and they don't do it anymore, is just write to them. Because you know, and I used to go to stage doors because I used to go to theatre because I love theatre. So I used to go up and meet them afterwards, and you get autographs that way. Because I mean, to me, when you go meet a big star, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Quite often, you know, okay, you spent your money, then you get your autograph. But I mean, real autograph collecting is when you actually, you know, they're called autograph hunters for a reason. you hunt them down, and you get the autograph. Or, you know, selfies were never a thing back in the day, but obviously selfies now are very, very sort of probably comparative as even as autographs now, especially with the prices. You find that. You know, but back in the day when I was doing it, people didn't care. If you had you didn't have a phone camera, you had one of those little disposable cameras, you know, you could buy for a £5. That's how I used to do my selfies, and they didn't care. They used to take photos, you know, all the time. But now, I mean, I dread to think. I mean, I sold most of mine. I've still got a few. I've still got a few hundred left, but I sold mine by auction, and I got a few thousand for them. But I think now, I mean, they would be worth a lot more because I had a lot of Star Wars which I sold. But there we go. Sorry, I think we've gone off topic as usual. So sorry, I just waffle on.
I was going to say I've done a few hotel stalking and backstage stalking to get autographs and pictures, but it's all part of the fun of it and collecting and that. And
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, and the thing is, I get people come up to me, not very often, but I do get them come up to me on the street. And yeah, you know, I'd rather do that because obviously I sell autographs. I'd rather sign things. I was in a KFC a couple of years ago now, and because I used the code on the phone, it's called Dark Knight because why wouldn't it be? And she go, "Oh, Dark Knight. Oh, well, that's a cool name." I said, "Yeah, yeah." And then she said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Well, I'm in it." And she couldn't believe it. This is the. And then she was getting photos with me, and this is the great, yeah. And she wanted me to sign napkins. So I was doing all this, and then I don't know, but you can feel people watching you. And I turned around to the restaurant, and there must have been about 100 eyes just all looking at me. And my partner, and she sat in the corner just laughing her head off. She had all these people looking at me, just because I was signing these autographs for this worker, and it's very, very strange when it happens. But like I said, I'm happy to do that for people. Like I say, it's a nice position to be in, and it's just nice seeing people. I mean, I was getting some tyres the other day, and a guy go, "Oh, you're that bloke from that," and he wanted some selfies, so I'm doing selfies. So it's cool and it's nice, and some people are a bit funny about it. I mean, some actors have probably had it all their life. I mean, I met Paul McCartney. He wasn't very forthcoming, but I mean, he still posed for a selfie and autograph. But he's probably had it a lot more than most. You know what I mean? So being one of the most successful, band members ever. But there we go. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
So obviously you're a fan going to Comic-Cons, but now you get booked on them. So what's it like being both sides of the table now? Obviously going from being a fan and now being a guest. Has it hit you as much, or you just full on into it?
Initially it was really weird because I was actually on the same side of the table as a lot of the people I'd actually met. So, example like Jeremy Bullock, one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and I used to meet him, all the time as a fan. And I remember him saying, he said, "What do you do to get this side of the table then, Martin?" Because he knew me by name, because I used to see him all the time. And then I said, I was on Batman and that, and he was, "Oh, that's awesome." And it's very strange. I mean, it's nice seeing the other side of the table. I've got my partner, she's amazing. She's my manager, and she gets me some bookings. I mean, we went to America to do a Harry Potter convention, which is awesome. I'm off to Vegas soon. I've got a friend over in Vegas, and she's going to try and get me a couple of events if she can, even if it's just signing in a shop. There's autographs over there, and celebrity in Vegas is such a massive thing. Yeah, so, it's good. And I've been to Germany, and like I said, we went to Wisconsin in America. So yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, really. That it's not tons of screen time and everything, but people just like the fact that they get to chat and meet people from the films and chat to them like you are. And I've got a lot of time for people. I can chat all day, as you can hear. So, and the thing about actors, they love talking about themselves. So it's quite a win-win sometimes. So.
Obviously, because you've also mentioned that you write and you direct and you produce, and
I love it. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that, because obviously you're like the triple threat. So what stuff have you written and have you worked on? Have you got anything in the works at all?
No, I mean, I'm concentrating now on my studies. I'm in my third year, as a media student. I'm doing film and television studies, and which is quite intense. It sounds fun, but it is intense. I'm doing Disney at the moment. I've got to write about Pinocchio in 1940, which is my next. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, sorry, your original question was, if you go on my IMDb page, I've done a few little films. They're really just sort of student projects, really, which, I've got Log Time on there. And then my sort of the biggest hit, I would say, Zed Lister, which was like a parody of me being a actor from Star Wars. At that point, I hadn't been in Star Wars, doing events. These films are on YouTube. And I'm very proud of Zed Lister. And then the director, he wanted to do a sequel, which I didn't want to do. So he did Zed Listers, which, I wasn't going to get funny about that. And I did a little cameo for him as well. And then I did another one where I played what they called traffic warden. Thank you. I played a traffic warden. Called Log Time. And that was good fun. But these were films that I worked with like up and coming talent, if that makes sense, and they'd use me, as the main. So all my characters were called John, as like John Everyman, and they were called Log. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so Log Time, Zed List, and Ticketer. They were my three films I did. But I've done sort of bits in other people's films, and they're, like I say, they're all on IMDb. And the production value is, for basically a no budget film, they look amazing. I've had people come up to me, "How'd you do that?" And it's really just down to the talent of the people I was working with. But I threw a little bit of money in, not a great deal, but I mean, they had all the equipment because they had access to it all, and the editing, and because they're students, they were sort of pretty high up on knowing what to do. And I got a few of my acting friends in there. So I got John Chapman in one of the. He was in Z List, and John Chapman plays Red 12 from the original Star Wars, which is quite cool. So they were really excited to have him in it. He plays himself. I've got Pam Rose, who that might mean something to you, but
I know Pam very well.
Yeah, well, she's in Z Listers, and I'm trying to think of any other actors. I think they're the two Star Wars actors I've got. Yeah, Pam's amazing. Pam's lovely. So they both popped up in it because they were sort of parodying Comic Cons. So I love doing stuff like that, and I mean, I love writing. And that was what I used to do back in the day. There, I mean, we're going back a few years now, and because they say write what you know, and obviously because that was like a new sort of thing for me doing these Comic Cons, and you used to see some funny sides. I'm not going to mock the people, but you have to be careful. You have to tread the line. You don't want to sort of bite the hand that feeds you. But there are characters, I say, in that world, because anything that there's sort of because I use the word fan, because obviously the word fan is fanatical. I mean, that's used probably too much, because I mean, I wouldn't call myself a fan. I've got an interest in these things, but a fanatical. But there are a lot of fanatics out there, and I would say Doctor Who is probably the most sort of famous for having fanatics, if you like. But I mean, I watch Star Wars, but it's not my life. Same with like other films like that. You watch it and that's it. But I mean, it does seem to be a very big part of a lot of people's lives. Some of these franchises, I would say, especially Harry Potter. And I mean, they'll ask me questions I wouldn't have an answer to. I'll just say, well, you know better than I do, and that's like my stock answer if I don't know the answer. Because I think there's this sort of misnomer that if you're in something that you know everything about it. That's not true. I mean, I read recently. I don't know if you're a Peep Show fan, are you?
Yeah, I watch Peep Show.
Well, I saw an interview with Matt King, who plays Superhands, and he said he's never ever watched one episode.
Oh,
and
really?
he said he gets people come up to him and they'll say stuff to him, and he can only assume it's from Peep Show, and they're like taken aback when they don't realise the reference. He says he gets people coming up and saying "man with van." He says I'll get that a lot, or "man with then," sorry, isn't it? Yeah, and he says he said he went out with his kids to a zoo. He just said he got mobbed by all these. Yeah, and he said he can't get his head around it. You know what I mean? Because I love Peep Show. I must have watched the whole thing about 10 times over. I actually love it. But he said, a lot of actors won't watch themselves on the screen. See, I don't bother me. I'll watch myself. But I mean, a lot of actors won't watch themselves, and I just found that fascinating because I think Matt King's amazing. I just watched Whites, which I didn't realise he actually wrote, and it was about working in a restaurant. And it's got quite a few people from Peep Show in it. The actress Suti, who plays Dobby, she's in it, and a couple of the other ones are in it. And it's absolutely brilliant. I didn't even know he was a writer, but he wrote that, and I found that on YouTube. So it's fascinating, really.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. Cause obviously, being in the wrestling business, and I've started doing a few Comic Cons now. I've hosted a few panels and done some live talks and bits. And the fan side, you definitely see, like, going from being a fan and then going, obviously working in the business, you can sort of see how people are nowadays. Like, some people, they really live for certain seasons and films and shows.
Yeah.
And, even with wrestling, I get people asking me about all wrestling things, but I don't actually really watch it at the minute because I can watch a match and I know where it's going. So it's kind of killed it a bit for me now.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, everyone's got. See, I never belittle anyone's interests. Everyone has their own interests. You know what I mean? I mean, you're obviously into the wrestling. I mean, and everyone, I love. I think Bond is probably my favourite. I actually love Bond films, and things like that, and things like Bourne Ultimatum, that kind of thing. I think, and I mean, what gets me talking about Bond is I like all the Bonds, so I'll happily watch a Roger Moore. But I think the new Daniel Craig ones, because a lot of people, oh no, yes, it has to be Sean Connery. For me, you have to move forward. And Daniel Craig, I had the pleasure of working with him on Golden Compass. And when I met him, he recorded Bond. He'd filmed Casino Royale, but it hadn't come out. So I didn't really have any point of reference to speak to him about other than Layer Cake. So I chatted to him about layer cake, and he said layer cake was really the reason he ended up getting the Bond gig. Because if you look at the pictures of layer cake, he stood there like that with the gun.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, when they released Bond, they re-released layer cake with him on the cover doing the Bond pose, because that wasn't initially the original cover, but they obviously wanted to cash in on the fact that he was Bond. And yeah, he was like one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And I saw an interview of him relatively recently, and they said, "What's the worst thing about becoming Bond?" And he said, "Going down to the pub to have a drink, because I can't, because he gets mobbed." And he said that's the only thing that really sort of affected him, you know, because he was quite a quiet man when I met him. He's quite reserved, but he was never really. He's an odd choice to play a leading man. He's always been sort of a character actor. He was in Our Friends in the North and Road to Perdition, things like that. He was never the main man. So when he actually got the part of Bond, it was quite a shock, I would say, to him, because he's suddenly then in the forefront, you know, as opposed to a secondary character, which is basically what he's been up to that point. So sorry, we've totally gone off the question as usual.
Cool, man. So obviously, looking at your career overall so far, I mean, what's your favourite set you've got to work on because of how the impression it left on you?
Say that again. Sorry, you cut out. Apologies.
Sorry. So looking overall at your career, because obviously you're still working so far, what's the most favourite set you've got to work on that's had the most impression on you when you walked on set and it stuck with you the most?
I've already mentioned it's got to be The Dark Knight. It was unbelievable. Just everything sort of aligned to be in that film, and working with Nolan, who was basically a genius, working with Ledger, who's obviously a genius, and I got to work with, oh God, I'm rubbish with names. The one who plays police commissioner, what's he called? Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman. Unbelievable. I got to chat to him about one of my favourite films. I believe it's the only film he's ever directed, Nil by Mouth. I chatted to him about Nil by Mouth, and he was like the nicest guy. And I didn't get to meet Christian Bale, which is maybe for the best, because he's quite a scary man from all accounts. Especially, you probably heard the rant on Terminator where he was screaming and shouting at that bloke for walking in his eye line. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
He's got a he wasn't there when I filmed, so I was quite pleased with it. So I thought, so really going back to your original question, it would have to be The Dark Knight. It was just unbelievable, and that's probably like I said to you earlier, that's my career highlight, I would say. It's just because it was, I mean, Nolan and Ledger, you don't get much better than that, really. So
obviously working on the different sets, did you get to be around any film props as well that you got to sort of get your hands on and have a look at?
Well, when I was on Golden Compass, when we were wearing like the sandals, they were all the same sandals from Gladiator, which is quite cool. So, but when I was on the Harry Potter film, they were really, really big about things not going missing. So, because I was handling a lot of props, the prop master was just out of scene, and I was chatting to him. He said, "Yeah, we've had so much stuff get pinched and then end up on eBay." So by the time I was on the last film, obviously there's been loads of films before, they keep seeing all props handing out on eBay. So they were very, very, very cautious about that. So I've never actually got to keep anything from. The only thing I did keep, which maybe I shouldn't, was they do a photo for your costume, and that's there. And on the last day, I pinched that because I thought they don't need it. That's only going to go in the bin. So I've got the picture, and it's my costume from the Golden Compass picture, which is quite nice. And I made that into a nice 10x8. So, yeah. But I mean, they would have only chucked that. So that's sort of the only thing really. That wasn't even a prop. That was just used by the wardrobe guys. So, yeah.
So obviously, I mean, I found you on social media, and I booked you for this through social media. So when it comes to booking you for Comic-Con events, can people just contact you through Facebook like I did?
That's what they do, basically. Yeah, I'll see an event. I mean, I may well contact them themselves if I see an event that pops up, or my manager will contact them, or I'll get contacted. Yeah, so I'm doing a few coming up. So yeah, it's all good, really. I'm doing the Aintree one, which would be lovely because it's at the race course itself, and I'm actually staying at the stables. They've turned the stables into a hotel, which is pretty cool. So I'm doing that. I'm doing quite a local one. I'm doing one Norwich at the actual UEA, which I'm a student at. And that's the Norwich Anime Gaming Con, which should be quite cool. That's in June. And then I've got, I'm doing one at a local rugby club, which has got Ross Mullen in, who's from Game of Thrones. He plays a White Walker, and myself and a few others. We've got that one we said, Lisa Clark, and that's in the end of this month. And I'm doing Legends, which is the Star Wars one. I think that's near Peterborough as well. So yeah, they're all sort of, yeah, they're all about, and I sort of promote them all on my page. So yeah, it's all good as far as I'm aware. So yeah, I love them. Like I say, it's great interacting. Oh, I do Peterborough Colchester, Invasion Colchester. I do that as well. So that's good fun. I've done that for the last sort of 6 or 7 years, and they basically take over all of the town centre of Colchester. And there's myself and about 10 other actors there doing signings. So that's pretty cool. I'm trying to think any others. They're on my phone, so I can't look. I'm using it for this podcast. So, but yeah, that's basically about it. I think about 13 this year in total. So I'm sure there's some I haven't remembered, but they're all on my diary. So.
Cool. And when people meet you at the tables, when it comes to signing the autographs, are you happy to personalise them to people and things?
Yeah, I can do whatever. I mean, I'm pretty open to it. I mean, a lot of them they'll bring, especially Harry Potter. They'll bring books, Harry Potter books, which I sign, and I've got all the photos I've got the scenes from the film on my page on Facebook. There's lots of pictures of me signing stuff, and there's me at Comic-Con, so you can see the kind of stuff. I sell pop vinyls as well. I usually sign the Joker pops and various Harry Potter pops, and I have got one of my own of my character from the Dark Knight, which sadly hasn't been made into that was like a prototype, but sadly that hasn't been made yet. Again, because of COVID, it's all sort of gone to pot, sadly. But yeah, I mean, I have like framed autographs as well for sale. So yeah, it's all good. Like I say, on my social media, there's all pictures, all the bits and bobs I sell. So and I do personal memos, like cameos as well, and selfies with people. So yeah, it's all good. I'd say I did one where they had a Joker car, so I went down to the car park and posed with the car, which is quite cool. So but yeah, I don't mind, like I said, and a lot of it, it's a lot of families, they all dress up, so there's a lot of me sort of perched in the middle of a family, all people dressed up in various costumes. So that's sweet. It's really nice. I mean, I've got kids myself, and sometimes they come with me and they enjoy it. So it's all good fun. So yeah.
So which social medias can we find you? Have you got Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter? Or have you just got Facebook? Or
yeah, no, I have got all of them, but I'm primarily on Facebook. And again, it's just my name. You'll find me on there. But yeah, I'm Insta. I've got TikTok, but I haven't done it on TikTok. And I'm on Twitter. But I've done a few little posts. But yeah, it's primarily Facebook. I know that's an old person's thing now, probably, isn't it? Facebook. But I've been on it for years. It seems to be the best medium because I can, people can contact me and send photos. I'm sure you can do all that with the others, but that's the one I'm on mainly. And yeah, I mean, yeah, if let's say it's not difficult to contact me, let's say that you have to Google me and you'll find me somewhere. So yeah, there's no problem there. People don't have a problem.
Also wonderful.
Sorry,
I was just saying, yes, wonderful. That's how I found you.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight away.
It's not difficult. I mean, no, it's not difficult to find me. I used to have a website, but I didn't really get any traffic, so I sort of gave up with that. That went through my equity card. They just gave me a little website, but that was more for sort of proper acting, if that makes sense, as opposed to fan interaction. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, Martin, it's come to the end, I'm afraid.
No worries. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Ben, and all the best.
It's been good fun. I hope to see you soon at definitely a convention, because you've mentioned a few that are quite local to where I am, so I might pop up to a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send. Yeah, afterwards I can tell you exactly. I can get my phone up and I can tell you exactly which ones I'm doing. So yeah, but if you've got anything, because obviously if you're wrestling ones, if you want to do anything, I'm happy to do appearances. I'm very reasonable. So because I don't know if your wrestling ones have sort of people appear, because like I said, I used to do Smash. and they were a combination of wrestlers and actors. So I don't know if that's something that you may or may not want to do in the future.
One of my main ones I work for, it's like a comic book inspired wrestling group. So yeah, there could be potential something in there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no problem. Okay, cool. Okay, then.
Awesome.
So, I'll happily talk to you after if you want to stop the recording, and I can have a quick chat with you if you want.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll just say a good quick outro sort of thing, and then yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
Just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, and I'm glad we got it working in the end.
Yeah, no, that's been awesome. And anytime, if you want to have another chat again, no problem at all, mate. Thanks,
Awesome.
Ben. Take care. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
And I thought my jokes were bad.